Everyone, gather round. Meet Foster's newest imaginary friend.
Wouldn't have thought that up.
What are you doing?
What? It's art.
Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends could very well be the show I watched most during my childhood. Foster's rose to prominence while I was in primary school, so I was pretty much watching the show every single day. Most people are nostalgic for the first wave of Cartoon Network shows like Dexter's Lab, however the shows that came afterwards are by far the ones I remember most fondly and have the strongest connection to. Foster's Home was created by Craig McCracken, who also created the Powerpuff Girls and more recently was responsible for Wander Over Yonder. McCracken got the idea for Foster's after he adopted a dog from an animal shelter and adapted the concept to be about imaginary friends. The show premiered on August 13, 2004, with the first season containing 13 episodes. Unlike a lot of cartoons, most episodes of Foster's Home have just one segment that fills up the entire 22-minute runtime. However, there is one episode in the season that is split into two 11-minute segments. It's kinda weird, but also pretty smart that they didn't decide to box themselves in by committing to just one format. Foster's also received high praise from critics throughout its run, and received a swag of awards, including 7 Emmys. But does Season 1 of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends still hold up? Let's find out. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends kicks off in a very ambitious way. The season and series as a whole debuted with an hour-long special, which is an incredibly gutsy way to start your show. However, this is a gamble that pays off in a massive way. In this special we meet Mac and his imaginary friend Blue, and immediately get hit with the news that Mac's mum wants him to get rid of Blue. Mac's mum thinks he's too old to have an imaginary friend, which I guess is fair enough, but in this world imaginary friends are actually real. What's wrong with keeping him? They see an advertisement for Foster's Home and it seems like their problem is solved. Unfortunately, the ad neglects to mention that Foster's is a home for imaginary friends to get adopted. For Blue to stay there, he'll have to be put up for adoption. Mac works out a temporary solution and agrees to come back to Foster's at 3 PM the next day. Here Blue meets Wilt, Coco and Eduardo, who take him under their wing and do their best to keep him from being adopted while Mac's away. Mac's dickhole older brother Terrence finds out that Mac hasn't actually given up Blue like his mother asked, and hatches a plan with the equally dickhole-ish Duchess to get rid of him. Their plan essentially boils down to them trying to murder Blue with one of the fearsome Extremosaurus imaginary friends. This is all kinds of messed up. Eventually Mac and the gang arrive and save the day. He then makes a deal with Madame Foster, the owner of the house, so that Blue won't be put up for adoption as long as he visits every day. I can understand why they'd probably be hesitant to make a deal like this in the first place, as they'd probably be skeptical that Mac is eventually going to stop coming. Having a 1 hour special kick off the series was a smart move, as it perfectly establishes who the characters are and their relationships. The bond between Mac and Blue is able to be properly fleshed out over an hour instead of being truncated into 22 minutes. Instead of just being told that Mac and Blue have an inseparable bond, we actually see this and it sets up the rest of the series nicely. The art style of Foster's Home is incredibly unique and kinda hard to properly describe. McCracken stated that the style was meant to evoke that period of late 60s psychedelia when Victorian stylings were coming into trippy poster designs. This aesthetic choice makes Foster's stand out from the crowd and is just really interesting to look at. I think the art style also helps to make the house feel incredibly grand, and they do a great job of making it really feel lived in and steeped in history. My favourite episodes in the season are the ones where they're really exploring all over the house. This is displayed best in the episode Dinner is Swerved. In this episode, Mac and Blue go up to the roof and are unable to remember their way back. This results in them trekking all over the house in an attempt for Blue to get to dinner and Mac to get home. Episodes like this just make the house feel mysterious and are filled with an air of wonder and intrigue. Similarly, I love how this show looks when set at night. The episode where everyone thinks Blue is a ghost is set entirely at night and looks beautiful, while also adding to that sense of mystery and intrigue the house gives off. Obviously I don't want future seasons to be saturated with these episodes as it'll make them lose their luster, but I hope they continue to sprinkle them in. As I mentioned earlier, outside of one episode, Foster's uses its 22-minute runtime for a single segment. I really enjoyed this as it meant they could tell more in-depth stories. I feel like 11-minute segments can really restrain cartoons as they have to rush a lot of the time. By using 22-minute segments, Foster's has plenty of time to tell its stories, and I think it would be a much weaker show if it was forced to cut every episode in half.
Thank you everybody for showing up.
Exactly why are we here?
My brother here doesn't think imaginary friends exist.
Okay, I believe!
You can unleash your imagination with Foster's Toys at Burger King. Wobbling, coloring, changing fun. There are 9 different toys in all. There's one in every kid's meal, featuring healthy choices like applesauce.
Have it your way!
Need an imaginary towel?
I'm good.
I don't really have much to be critical of when looking at Foster's first season. I guess my biggest negative is that sometimes Blue can be a little too annoying. Occasionally he becomes like the later seasons of SpongeBob, where he becomes a little bit grating. However, this doesn't happen too often, so it doesn't really cause too much of a problem or affect my enjoyment of the season. As a kid, this sort of thing never bothered me, but as I get older it starts to become less funny. They definitely need to avoid making it too much of a regular occurrence in future seasons though. I also never got the sense that most of the friends really wanted to be adopted. There are moments like where the Duchess is desperate to get adopted, but for the most part everybody seems happy and content with living at Foster's. I assume adoption is how Foster's makes their money and keeps its doors open. But honestly, who wouldn't be content with living in a mansion? Particularly with Wilt, Coco and Eduardo, you never feel like they actually want to be adopted, and even when Mac and Blue are sabotaging Adopt a Thought Saturday, the friends don't seem too bothered by it. I hope in future seasons they further explore them wanting to be adopted and how this plays out with them having to leave all their friends at the house behind.
Blue, come on, we're going to the park.
Señor Blue, el tráfico! Master Beauregard, you must stay aware of traffic. First, find a crosswalk. Then look left, right, and left again. And do not forget to obey traffic signals. Now, I'd also like to speak to you about...
Sorry, Mr. Herman. We need to get to the park.
You probably need to stay.
Season 1 of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends is great. The decision to kick things off with a 1-hour special is a brilliant choice that pays off by fleshing out all the reoccurring characters and getting us invested and helping us understand Mac and Blue's relationship. The art style sets itself apart from most cartoons, and the way they build up the intrigue of the house in some episodes is fantastic. At times as a viewer you actually feel like you're in the shoes of Blue in being completely blown away by the house. Any negative things I have to say about the show are incredibly minor and probably nitpicky more than anything. The pressure to deliver after creating the Powerpuff Girls would have been incredibly high, but Craig McCracken definitely met those standards and possibly even surpassed them.